The concluding sequence of The Revenant, 2015, directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu, serves as a culmination of the film's themes of survival, revenge, justice, and the cyclical nature of violence in the harsh American frontier. It begins after the brutal hand-to-hand combat between Hugh Glass and John Fitzgerald, where both men are left wounded and exhausted on the snowy riverbank. The scene opens with the arrival of a group of Iroquois warriors on horseback, emerging from the misty forest across the river. Fitzgerald, already gravely injured from his fight with Glass, is taken out of the river by Elk Dog, the Iroquois chief. He drags him out of the river and probably scalp him, ensuring his death in a manner that echoes the film's earlier depictions of frontier brutality. This act is definitive and unceremonious. Fitzgerald's body floats downstream in the river, symbolizing the erasure of his presence from the narrative. This moment subverts the traditional Western revenge trope. Glass, who has pursued Fitzgerald with relentless determination, does not deliver the final blow himself. Instead, the Iroquois intervene. The movie gives them agency in a story dominated by white fur trappers' conflicts. The Iroquois, portrayed throughout as victims of colonial exploitation, their village attacked, resources stolen, women abducted and raped, exact justice on Fitzgerald, who embodies the greedy, treacherous settler. This killing represents a form of indigenous retribution, highlighting how the cycle of violence stems from colonial incursions rather than personal vendettas. It underscores the film's critique of manifest destiny. Fitzgerald's demise is not heroic but inevitable, a consequence of the broader ecological and cultural disruptions he represents. By denying Glass the satisfaction of killing Fitzgerald, the narrative forces a reflection on the futility of individual revenge in a world governed by larger forces of nature and history. Anyway, Glass had mortally wounded Fitzgerald. Making them killing a condemned wounded man is a way to create or confirm a link between Glass and the Native Americans. But this link ambiguous, as shown Iroquois passing by Glass, wounded, without even talking to him or willing to help him. In fact, the death was inevitable, with Iroquois as cosmic agents present or not. The hero remains Glass, and he did the greater job, full of resentment and revenge feelings. As the Iroquois warriors continue on horse passing by Glass, they seem to ignore and neglect him. Powaka, the woman and daughter of the chief Elk Dog, woman liberated by Glass earlier in the timeline, seems to be the reason why they do not kill Glass. The hero seems also close from death, having been severely wounded during the fight. Rather than attacking him, as they might have earlier in the film, given the ongoing conflicts between natives and trappers, they pass by without harm. It's a moment of mercy or recognition, contrasting with the film's pervasive violence. Glass's survival here can be interpreted also as a tacit acknowledgement of his shared suffering. Unlike Fitzgerald, Glass has endured the wilderness in a way that aligns him more closely with indigenous resilience. His Pawnee heritage, through his deceased wife and son, and his hallucinatory connections to native spirituality throughout the film position him as a liminal figure, not fully colonizer, not fully indigenous. The Iroquois' decision not to kill him suggests a selective justice. They target the unrepentant exploiter, Fitzgerald, while sparing the survivor who has been reborn through nature's trials. Symbolically, this passing reinforces the film's motif of interconnectedness with the land. Glass, having been mauled by a bear and left for dead, embodies a humbled humanity that the warriors perhaps intuitively respect. It also critiques the binary of savage versus civilized, showing restraint as a form of superior moral authority amid chaos. Among the Iroquois group is Powaka, the young woman who was earlier abducted and raped by French trappers, a subplot that humanizes the indigenous struggle. As the horses pass by Glass, the camera lingers on Powaka's face in a close-up. She gazes directly at Glass with an expression that blends stoicism, recognition, and quiet intensity. This gaze is brief but piercing, devoid of dialogue, emphasizing nonverbal communication. The Powaka gaze is a symbolic element, representing the film's exploration of trauma, resilience, and cross-cultural empathy. Powaka's presence reminds viewers of the gendered violence inherent in colonial expansion. Her earlier assault parallels the broader violation of indigenous lands and peoples. Her look at Glass is not accusatory but evaluative, perhaps acknowledging his role in avenging similar wrongs. Glass had helped rescue her indirectly through his actions. It humanizes the Urakura, shifting them from antagonists to complex figures with their own narratives. This gaze bridges the personal and collective. It confronts Glass and the audience with the consequences of frontier masculinity, where women's suffering is often collateral. In a broader sense, it symbolizes unfinished reconciliation. Powaka's survival mirrors Glass's, but her gaze implies that true justice remains elusive in a world scarred by exploitation. This moment elevates the indigenous perspective, making it the moral center of the resolution. Following the Urakura's departure, the scene transitions into Glass's final visions. He sees ethereal images of his deceased Pawnee wife, floating amid the snowy landscape, her form ghostly and serene. These visions build on earlier hallucinations throughout the film, where she appears as a guiding spirit, whispering words of endurance drawn from native wisdom, the recurring motif of the tree in the wind that bends but does not break. The imagery is poetic. The wife reaches out, her hand almost touching Glass, before fading into the white expanse. The camera captures Glass's labored breathing, the snow falling softly, and the vast, indifferent wilderness enveloping him. These visions encapsulate the film's spiritual and existential themes. They represent Glass's internal reconciliation with loss, his wife and son murdered by soldiers, fueling his quest. The apparitions blend Christian and indigenous mysticism, with the wife as a transcendent figure symbolizing harmony with nature, in contrast to the destructive human conflicts. Glass, on the brink of death, confronts his grief not through victory but through acceptance. The visions suggest that survival is not merely physical but spiritual, tied to cultural memory and the land's enduring cycles. The fading images imply ambiguity. Does Glass die or persist? This open-endedness critiques the myth of the indomitable frontiersman, portraying survival as fragile and illusory. The natural elements, snow, river, forest, dominate, reducing human drama to a fleeting moment in an eternal ecosystem. The film concludes with Glass turning his head slowly to stare directly into the camera. His eyes, weary and resolute, hold the gaze as his breath fogs the lens slightly, creating a sense of intimacy and immediacy. This direct address, possibly breaking the fourth wall, a technique where the character acknowledges the audience's presence. This final gaze is a masterful narrative device, inviting profound interpretation. It transforms the viewer from passive observer to participant, implicating them in the story's moral landscape. By looking at the camera, Glass confronts the audience with the weight of the witnessed violence, survival, and injustice, asking unspoken questions. What have you learned? How complicit are you in histories of exploitation? It breaks the illusion of historical distance, linking the 1820s frontier to contemporary issues like environmental degradation and indigenous rights. The potential fourth wall break enhances the film's immersive realism. Much of the movie uses natural light and long takes to blur fiction and reality, culminating in a meta-commentary on storytelling itself. Glass's breath on the lens adds a tactile, human element, emphasizing vulnerability amid epic scope. Ultimately, this gaze leaves the ending unresolved, forcing personal reflection on revenge's cost and humanity's place in nature. In totality, this final scene weaves revenge into a tapestry of cultural clash, spiritual transcendence, and ecological humility, making The Revenant a meditation on the American mythos rather than a straightforward tale of vengeance. As a conclusion, and to summarize, let's say that Hugh Glass finally confronts John Fitzgerald. After a brutal fight, Glass realizes that revenge is in God's hands, not mine, and pushes the deadly wounded Fitzgerald into the river to be dealt in an even quicker way with the iñárritu. The movie ends with a severely injured Glass crawling through the snow, seeing a vision of his late wife, and finally turning his gaze directly into the camera lens. Let's now focus on the very last seconds of the movie, the final stare of Glass. The meaning of this final stare is widely debated by critics and audiences. Here is an analysis of its possible significance. 1. A question of morality and the cost. The gaze functions as a silent interrogation. Throughout the film, Glass's entire will to live was fueled by a singular, violent purpose: revenge. When he finally reaches that goal, he is left physically shattered and spiritually hollow. The question to the audience: by looking at us, Glass may be asking, was it worth it? Or, what now? It's just a mirror to the viewer. For over 2 hours, the audience has cheered for his survival and his eventual bloodlust. By looking back at us, he forces us to confront our own role in desiring that violence. He isn't necessarily asking if he was right to kill Fitzgerald, as he ultimately leaves Fitzgerald's fate to God, or nature, or the iñárritu, but rather questioning the emptiness that follows the completion of such a quest. 2. The presence of a higher power. Throughout the film, director Alejandro González Iñárritu and cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki use a wandering, or sentient, camera that often fogs up from breath or gets splashed with blood. The audience as God. Some interpretations suggest that the camera represents the creator or a higher spiritual presence that Glass has been speaking to. When he looks into the lens, he is looking at the entity, the viewer or the creator, that has watched his every agony and thinks maybe revenge is in the hand of God, not in your hands. His look is often described as poignant yet inscrutable. Having seen his wife walk away into the trees, symbolizing her finally leaving him or him letting her go, his look to the camera represents a man who is finally present. He is no longer living in the past, his family, or the future, his revenge. He is simply being in his final, labored breaths. 3. As long as you can still grab a breath. The film opens and ends with the motif of breathing. After the screen goes black, we continue to hear Glass's ragged breathing for several seconds into the credits. The look into the camera is a testament to his survival. He has come back from the dead, the definition of a revenant. Rather than a traditional breaking of the fourth wall meant to be playful, this is a thematic representation of presence. He isn't acknowledging he is in a movie, he is acknowledging that he is still here, still breathing, and still fighting, despite having no more external reasons to do so. Or maybe he is acknowledging that he has done the job, maybe not the right one, but now it's time for him to die also.